and shaming going on in that context. And the problem that I continue to have is that men are not, as in a general sense, not that vocal. We wait for women to sort of make the first move and stand up and speak out. And then some of us as men will join in, because most of us as men are actually good men. We don't like this. We are ashamed in a way, but we're not proactive. We're not active within our male communities about doing something about it. Apart from the fact that as men, we're generally not that good in maintaining good, close, intimate relationships with each other. I mean, we have a suicide rate in Australia which is abysmal. When after the suicide, everyone says, "Oh, I didn't know it was that bad." Did you ask?
Yeah. I'm going to chime in real quick, Gunter, because the echo is very slight. Lorin, when Lorin speaks, she is not echoing. So I don't know if that's causing, since you're in the same studio, because I can't fix it on my end. I just wanted to chime in on that, just in case, it's because I know echoes can bother you, and so Lorin is not echoing. It's just you.
Just you, Dane.
Okay, is that better?
You're still echoing, but Lorin isn't. So I don't know if y'all are able to.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to do with that. I'm not that tech savvy on this one.
Just continue on, and maybe it'll go away. It seemed like it just popped in. So just continue with the conversation. It doesn't seem to be. I'm talking to a couple people that are in the chat, and they only hear it on you and not everybody else. Okay. But go ahead and just continue, and we'll just work through it.
So,
I wanted to say, sorry.
Go on, Ashley.
I was just, I had a thought on what you were saying too, and it's so many cultures, religions, all of that really play a factor too into, I think, because you made a comment about men. I don't think it's correct that like men would be lumped in a certain, like not all men are the same, and I feel sad about saying that. Like, I mean, I feel sad about saying like not my situation or some woman who's in a really bad situation. No, not all men are like that. No, and that does make me really sad, because it shouldn't be that way. I mean, there is amazing men who would stand up for these, just like you're doing, like stand up for all of these causes and really supporting other men. And I just, it makes me sad to think that some, that the great, there shouldn't be all clumped together.
I agree, absolutely.
Right. And I read a really interesting article not long ago, and you know how a lot of people react in that sort of rejecting, defensive way. A lot of men will say, well, not all men are violent. And it's absolutely true. But the question we need to ask is, why are so many men violent? And that has to be a cultural process, a sociological process. It has to be the way that they are raised, think about themselves and others. And, so that's what we need to target, not the men, but the culture. Yeah. We have a particular issue at the moment that we're in discussion about the culture of teenage boys in very elite private schools in this country, and the misogynist ideas and beliefs that they have, and the way they treat the other teenage girls that they associate with, and even their female teachers. It's all sort of coming out and being exposed because of one very brave young lady from that elite area of schooling who actually opened up the discussion, having been abused by these boys. And it's fueled by, alcohol and peer group pressure and that chauvinistic, machismo thing is not only in the Spanish era, it's everywhere still, And so that's the discussions we need to be having. It's like a small Me Too moment just for Australian elite schools at the moment.
That's why I speak very clearly in Making Good Men Great about one of the first things men need to understand is the concept of patriarchy, because we don't use that term generally. That comes from feminism. At the moment, a lot of men hear patriarchy, they go, oh, it's those feminazis again, even when it comes from a male. But once you explain that to them, they start to go, yeah, well, actually that fits, that's true, but what alternative is there? And that's where I go, there is an alternative. So in that process, we go and deconstruct patriarchy, and we begin to start the foundation for a new masculine culture that's not based on those values. The problem is that those values are culturally ingrained in education, in health, in the economic system, in the political system. I mean, if we look at the proportion of women, representing their communities within politics, it's still not really equitable. There's still these pockets of boys' clubs. And I think that most men see it, but they don't know what to do about it. And then we have these pockets, where I'll talk about the backlash, where you get men moving towards ultra-conservative, patriarchal ideals as a defense process. And I think both of you are right in terms of we need to use the media in a way that can begin to deconstruct that whole process. Deconstruct that what we're living in is a culture that has a tendency to perpetuate the problem.
Yes, I'm really interested, Myrna, in what you were saying about film and how that perpetuates those roles and those ideas that are so sort of dangerous, really, for women. And because, as you said, that film is extraordinarily influential in the way people think, and what they take home from the theatre or the TV is really quite significant.
It is, and it's film can be so powerful in allowing people to step into somebody else's shoes and see something and feel something that they may have never thought about. And like you were saying, when you're having these backlashes, and sometimes you wonder, it's like, why is the backlash? Well, it's because this, and I just have this stance, and it's just this urge to protect and to stay ahead and to be, not be, in their terminology, annihilated. I don't want to be annihilated. This is all I know. It's that fear. But I think in the end, all of us really just want the same thing, and it's when you can break it down to where I think it all just comes down to being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, which is very difficult. As actors, it's something we're taught. Like it's we have to learn that because we have to portray so many people, and in doing so, sometimes we and Ashley can attest to this. Sometimes you open yourself up to feel things that you didn't necessarily, want to feel, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I have so much compassion for this character because even though she's being misunderstood, all the pain she has inside, because we're delving into that and really thinking about. And it's psychological too. It's like really trying to figure out this person and why they do the things they do. So until other people can open up to really feel that compassion and understand somebody else's plight, and what they go through. It's like once you do that, you're like, oh.
Here's the challenge, and that is the way that we as boys and men have been traditionally socialised. It does two things. One is it narrows our capacity to express ourselves emotionally, and the second bit, and this is exactly what you're talking about, Myrna, is that it reduces our capacity to empathise, because if you empathise, you're not going to behave badly, right? And you won't be destructively competitive, because you're going to go, oh, I don't want to be treated like that. Why should I treat somebody else like that? So that's the psychological consequence of a sort of, essentially an ideology like patriarchy. And that's where we need to really, really focus, I think, in our in the way that we raise boys and girls, just about how to enhance that. But also give kids, because I work with people who are hugely empathic, but their level of empathy actually gets them into trouble because they don't set boundaries, right? And often their empathy leads to rationalising why the other person's treating them badly, as opposed to going, you know what, I don't accept this. You know, and often communities go, oh, well, you know, you need to understand the other person. I mean, I've had, you know, people coming to see me where, you know, certainly in the early past where I was working with a lot of women, where they've gone to the minister of their church, telling them, sharing with them about how their husband was treating them, and the minister said, you need to forgive him, and you need to stay there. And it's like, are we kidding?
Yes! Are we kidding?
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I think it was you actually who said there's such an interrelationship between religion and politics and the community factors involved, and the more that this is, there's going to be two things. One, the more we're going to discuss this, the more there are going to be some people who are going to go into backlash. But the more mainstream we're going to make it, the more people are going to start really thinking, especially I see that with boys. A lot of boys that I work with have been really sort of ticking this over. And I work with boys from, you know, those exclusive private schools, and some of them are exceptional. They understand this, but, you know, they're working in a sense still against the stream. Because if you're in the locker room and everyone's boasting about stuff and, you know, making derogatory jokes about women, it's a real risk when you're 16 to go, listen, guys, you're you know, to put it bluntly, you guys are talking shit. You need to stop. And unless they get the backing from a teacher, they hate to be the kid walking down the corridor if they're a boarder, because the rest of the group's going to sort him out. So let me ask you something. Along this line, do you guys have any other projects? Because actually, your interest is in kids, right?
Yeah, I've worked with children pretty much my whole career. I love this idea of, you know, I do a lot of like the educational theater, right? So
yeah,
my mind is always brewing on how to create content live or, you know, on film that can kind of portray some of these ideas that would create the change. I mean, truly, like I'm always thinking about a bigger purpose to the work I'm doing. And Myrna and I do this a lot. We collaborate a lot on like these, you know, thoughts and ideas. And I think that's how Strawberry Cake happened. It's always that step on trying to figure out how can we be a part of all of this and what does that look like. But I believe it starts in the home, and it does start with the children, and especially in their younger ages. I work with 2 to 5 year olds, so it's really fun. They're really cute and fun.
Yes.
Yes. Well, Lorin and I have grandchildren in that age group. You know, we have a granddaughter who I would probably best describe as a shield maiden. No flies on that girl, you know, fearless, you know, stands up for herself, you know, and you know, it's great. It's because she sees that in the family.
I know for me that whenever I do a project or I get offered a project, I think a lot about what I'm putting out there.
Yes.
Like I'm very, it's very much in the forefront of my thinking. The show that I was doing with my husband, you know, the little skits and everything to make people laugh, but you have to also have a conscious of what that's going to do, you know, what are we saying? What are we bringing into the world when we write lyrics? What is this? I have a lot of songs that deal with abuse and women. I have a song called "You Only Call Me When You're Drunk," which was like, it's a blues song. It's funny, but it's actually a woman standing up for herself and saying, "You don't get to do that to me anymore."
Yeah.
I found my pride. I found my voice. No more. So in my music, I